Sure. Well, there's a few concepts that I'll introduce here. One, and a lot of these concepts I get from like a few thinkers and doers who I really respect. Like one is Dave Snowden, and he introduces this concept to me called bounded applicability. And it's an important one because the things that I'm going to share here, they might have bounded applicability. Like maybe they work in my context, but not in another context. And there's sometimes there's limits to things where they apply, and then there's places where they just don't. So I'll just keep that in the forefront of our minds here with some of the things that I'll share. One is that these mental models, we are coming at it from this idea of theory informed practice. So we're on the ground, we're doing work, and we are using theory to support the work that we're doing. So it's not totally random, but it's not totally like controlled either. And so this theory informed practice is an important one that we're using. And what I found in the field, as it were, is like my original compulsion was like, oh, let me tell everyone about these mental models. That way we're all working from the same place, we all know what we're doing, and we all are share in the same understanding of these frameworks and mental models that we can use together. Well, not everyone wants to hear about your framework. And again, when I'm saying all this, I'm saying this has just been my experience, and I'm not saying that's how it is for everybody. This is just what I've seen in my own work, is that not everyone wants to hear about your framework. Not everyone wants to hear about this mental model that you have, and knowing where the appropriate time is to bring it up and to share these things, and when the appropriate time is to just do it, just get into it. And then as naturally people have questions, or someone says, hey, well, what, like, is this part of some larger process? Like, well, I'm so glad you asked. I got a million things I can tell you now. But until then, until it's necessary, it may not be appropriate to get into all those mental models. Now, of course, with who we're speaking with now is, I'm guessing, is other landscape leaders and people who are landscape leader curious, maybe. So we can talk more about those mental models because it's more appropriate here. But that's a long disclaimer, but it's from like some hard won lessons that some of my mentors have told me, like, don't talk about it, just do it. And I'm like, well, no, I really want to, because like I love this stuff, and won't everybody? Not always the case. So there's the big mental model disclaimer. And you probably aren't going to listen to me, and you're going to do it anyway, and maybe you'll find the same thing out, or maybe you'll learn something else that that I'm wrong in your context. And that's kind of the idea, is all this stuff is contextually dependent. So we've talked about like I gestured towards this multi-capital framework as one of the things that we use, and we can track all the different capital flows and the capital development of any project. Ideally, any project that you're doing is working on all forms of capital simultaneously. And it's easy to look at in a visual example of how we take like our community garden, and then we can show how we're developing all the forms of capital, even financial capital, even political capital, so on and so forth. So that's just like a general idea to consider. If you want to look into one way of looking at a multi-capital framework, there's many, but the one that gets a lot of traction, especially like in academic circles, that I found, is a CCF framework, or community capitals framework. And so that's worth taking a look. But if we were to zoom out about these frameworks in general, like why do they matter? This also comes from eugenesis, is that how we think shapes and affects what we think about. And then what we think about affects what we do. And then what we do has some kind of effects in the world. So the power's upstream. You can get so much leverage from shifting the way that we think, because that's going to have all these downstream effects.